I think a couple of things. I think one is I think you've got to remain curious. I think being curious, I think asking lots of questions. I think listening to people on front line, listening to your clients, our members, what are their ideas, and finding ways to do that. I think the other thing is in any organization, it's all about your people, right? It's all about your culture. And if you have to have people motivated. And in my legacy, I don't have kids, and I think my legacy in my life is if I can have an impact on people in our organization that will take them to a place in their careers that they didn't think they were capable of going to, and I can help them on their journey, they will you see people open up in different ways that you wouldn't expect, and they do things that they didn't think they were capable of, and that's what drives an organization. It makes it fun, it makes it interesting. People get passionate about it, and that's how you grow. And I think if you can unlock that from a culture, it's super important. So for me, I mean, I think that my I suppose advice to anyone running businesses are those things: be curious, be in the details, speak to lots of people, give talent opportunities and promote talent, because that's the thing. And also great leadership is getting out of people's way. Find good people and just let them do their thing, and if they fail, that's fine. Work it out. But of course, having the vision and an idea of where you want to go. There's a guy called Tony Schwartz that wrote the book Powerful Engagement and things, and he's a friend of ours, and he talks about the fact that as a CEO, you're the chief energy officer. You're the person that goes in, the guy or the girl that goes in, and you're that galvanizing force and that energy component in a business. And if you can impart that to an organization and you can inspire people to do their best work, that's what drives change, and that's what makes a difference.
This episode is brought to you by WeWork. The way you work has changed. The way you grow your business has changed. WeWork has flexible workspaces built for all the ways you work today, so you can drop in, connect with others, and get to your to-dos. Get out of the house for a few hours and pop by WeWork's co-working space when you need it. Looking to reconnect the team a few times a week? Bring everyone together in an office that fits what they need. Take meetings or offsites around the world from London to LA. Unlock hundreds of locations easily with all kinds of great amenities. They're even dog-friendly. Now you can try out your local WeWork for the day for 50% off. To redeem this offer, just go to we.co/behindthebrand, download the WeWork app, and use the code BehindTheBrand. Check out by April 15th, 2023 to receive 50% off your booking. This episode is brought to you by my brand new, absolutely free VIP list. Want to get a short note from me each week with what I've learned from interviewing some of the smartest people in the world, the best inspiration, education, access to my private events, special perks, unique finds, free stuff, and a lot more to help you improve your life and business? Get on the list. Just go to behindthebrand.tv/VIP. It's an email newsletter. It's as easy as that. 123 VIP. behindthebrand.tv/VIP and get on the list. This episode is brought to you by Vimeo. I've been a pro user of Vimeo basically since I started my production company in 2010. Vimeo is for creative professionals like me, and I use it in several different ways. For example, it's a place for me to upload my videos with a password for my clients to be able to review and download the work I'm doing for them. There's no compression, crushing of black colors, or oversaturation like what I get when I upload a YouTube video. My clients get the full 4K resolution HD as it was intended. I also use it to host and broadcast live events. I also use Vimeo for my portfolio, case studies, and it never has annoying pre-roll ads. I can create a customized player and keep people on my landing page so they don't get distracted and go down the rabbit hole watching someone else's stuff. What you may not know about Vimeo is that you can use it if you're in HR or if you own a company. You can put all of those onboarding videos all in one place, a nice, tidy, professional-looking playlist or playboard where people can consume and understand or download all the new training videos all in one place. You could also do the same thing if you teach a course. Imagine putting all your videos behind a paywall, charging for it, and then sending people the link with a password. Need a videographer, creative director, or editor? Vimeo lets you post jobs and find creative professionals. There's a ton more options, so I would suggest checking them out. Just go to vimeo.com and see what's possible.
Hi, my name is James Henderson. I'm the CEO of Exclusive Resorts, and I'm on Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode. James, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
Oh, that's a good question. I I think by chance is probably the best way of putting it. I always think of my life as sort of these chance encounters and being in the right place at the right time. My life has always, I've spent most of my career, I guess, working in luxury goods spaces. So I've always been in businesses that work with high net worth clients. And I was running a private aviation company prior to this. And we had just sold that company to another group. And I was about to sort of embark on another phase of my life with that organization. And I got a call from a recruiter, a headhunter. And they gave me a call, and I met a guy that was the chairman or the co-chairman of Exclusive Resorts. He was a fascinating character, a guy called Philippe Bourguignon. And I just really liked him. And I think, in my life, I've got to a point where in my career where I just want to work with people that I like and I can get a connection with and who I think have good values and things like that. So I met Philippe Bourguignon, who we hit it off really well. And then the company I work for, Exclusive Resorts, is owned by Steve Case. And I went and met Steve down in DC. And he's just a super guy. He's humble, incredibly successful, very thoughtful. And really liked it and liked the business and liked the bones of the company. And I started back in October 2019.
Amazing. We're going to unpack more about Exclusive Resorts, but I want to go back in the chronology. And the context behind this question is there's a lot of people who are, doing their thing. They're working their 9 to 5. Maybe they have a new startup and they're trying to figure out, am I on the right path? Am I really doing what I love, or am I doing what I do best?
Mm.
And I always like to ask people who have an interesting career path, did you always know that this is sort of what you'd be doing? What, young James, what were you thinking about when you were in school and thinking about the career path? Where did you want to go?
That's a great question. No, not at all. I mean, I think, so I'm British by nationality, grew up in the UK, in a small town outside of Manchester, and didn't really have a lot of aspirations as a kid. I was probably one of the first in my family to go to college, went to university, and everything was sort of one step at a time. And so I went to university in Birmingham in the UK. And at that time, I think I always thought that if I traveled, I guess if I'm really honest about it, I wanted to sort of make myself a more interesting person. Mm-hmm. And I thought if I traveled a bit and I did something that was a bit out of the normal for the sort of environment that I was in, that I would come back and people would find me more interesting. And that was kind of the reality of it. And I sort of had this fascination to go to go overseas, and I got an internship actually in London with a company called BP, which is sort of a year out when I was in college. And I was working the trading desks for BP. And I was spending my mornings working with a team out in Hong Kong and Singapore and things. And in the afternoons, I'd work with the people in the US. And I was talking to the guys in Hong Kong saying, can I get a trip out to Hong Kong for the summer? Because I thought that'd be interesting. And in the end, I couldn't do that. But someone said, do you want to go to LA? So I went to LA for the summer. And that was my first sort of trip outside of the UK. And that just gave me the bug. And I went back, finished my final year at college, and then decided I still wanted to go to Asia. So I packed my bags and I kind of went.
Yeah. I put a timestamp on that. About what year was that?
1990. Yeah. Okay. So I left in 1990 in the UK. So I went to Australia for about 18 months. I got a job with a management consultancy company. That's where I sort of cut my teeth on, data analytics and strategy and writing business plans, which is kind of the core of what I do. I write a lot of business plans and do growth stuff.
Yeah.
And then went to Hong Kong with a suitcase, didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
Got off the plane, started looking around, got a job.
Yeah. So this 1990s, I mean, this is the US is coming out of a housing recession, out of a, kind of a bust market, getting back on its feet. What was the environment like at that time?
So, I mean, it's hard to tell, honestly. I mean, I think I was out of the UK pretty quickly, and I was in Australia for 18 months. I was having a blast. Went to Hong Kong. At the time, Hong Kong was booming. Mm-hmm. It was a point where it was also a little bit of a frontier town as well, because Asia hadn't really developed as it was. As a British person, I had access, got a passport, so I could work there. And it was just fun. It was a very dynamic environment. I ended up in Hong Kong for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I did the first 2 years, I did Hong Kong, China, and traveled in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, places like that in the early 90s, which was, I mean, that was really just the wild frontier at that point. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I'm remembering too, like it's also a time about a decade before that. That was the time where the Japanese market was buying up a huge amount of United States real estate.
Yep.
A lot of New York
That's
City
right.
and
That's
a lot
right.
of LA, and then there was a bit of a bubble, and then the next frontier was Hong Kong, China,
Yep.
that just started to explode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was out there so I spent 2 years doing Hong Kong, China, and then I did, they gave me a job, and I was in my early 20s. It was amazing. I was traveling all over Asia. I was regional business development director. So I was literally all over Southeast Asia. I was in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and growing and developing new markets for a luxury goods group out there. So it was just a super fun time to be there.
Yeah. And I'll bet it did make you a more interesting person. You become, I lived and worked in Asia a little bit as well, and it made me a more well-rounded human, just understanding Eastern philosophy versus
Yep.
Western. It's a totally different way of doing things. Even the grammar is completely opposite of our
Yep.
grammar.
Yep.
Everything's
Yep.
almost like metaphorically backwards different. What did you learn during those times?
Well, I'm not really sure whether I ever became that more interesting person, but it was always an aspiration. I think I'm still aspiring to it. But I think for me it was such a different environment. It was a very different culture.
Yeah.
Everything from the language, obviously, and seeing the difference in cultures across Asia Pacific was pretty extraordinary. I mean, China is obviously very specific, but when you go into other places like Indonesia and the Philippines and places like that, and you see the way people work and different styles, I think it gives you it broadens your mind. I think you see different cultures, different perspectives. I think you also get out of your comfort zone of your own world that I saw in the UK from this middle class background that I lived in, and living out there. You see things very differently, and I think values change. I think it opens your mind. I think it probably makes you more ambitious.
Yeah.
Because of possibility that you can see. I certainly think I became more entrepreneurial because of it.
Yeah. That was my experience as well. I mean, I was very ethnocentric at the time, only seeing it one certain way, the Western way, and then seeing how the rest of the world sort of does things, from medicine to food to cultural values to religion. Right. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Humbling too, realizing I've only just I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just again the sort of the diversity of cultures was extraordinary, and I was lucky. I had a lot of responsibility at a fairly early age, which was fantastic for me.
Yeah, and so where did you go from there?
So I did. So in '97, I had been in Hong Kong for 5 years and been traveling over Asia. I did a brief stint in Singapore, and I was going to go and do my MBA in Lausanne in Switzerland, and that was kind of my goal. And so I had a place at IMD in Lausanne, which is one of the sort of the top European business schools. I was super excited about it. And a friend of mine called me up, and this is sort of where I think you have to be open to opportunity. And he said, "I've just met this guy who bought a Formula One team," and I watched Formula One as a kid, and I thought, well, that's sort of one of those crazy things that you could never be part of. And so I ended up going and meeting this guy in Switzerland, and this guy comes into a conference room, and he gives me a story in '97 that he just bought this Formula One team. He invested into the Sauber Formula One team, Swiss team. He'd signed up Petronas as a partner. It was the first time in Formula One. He had got Didi Mateschitz, the owner of Red Bull, to invest into the team.
Big deal.
Which is a big deal, yeah. And the big deal was he'd done a deal with Ferrari to supply engines to the Formula One team. And he was a deal guy. He was a Liechtenstein Trust guy, phenomenal character. But he needed someone to write a business plan. And I used to write business plans all the time. And he said, "Can you write a business plan? If you write this business plan for me, I'll give you some money, and it will a consultancy fee, and it will pay your college tuition fees. And then go and do your MBA, and maybe there's something to come back for after that."
Yeah. What an opportunity.
It was amazing. And so I went to, I met him, and honestly, when I first met him, I thought this guy was I didn't quite realize whether it was real and whether it wasn't.
Yeah.
And he invited me back a week later to meet in the Formula One factory. And I'm sitting in the factory.
I want to pause you for just a second because I'm super curious about signals, and you followed that signal. So I want to really unpack that a little bit more, because I've talked about it more than once on this show and asked people, I'm guilty of sometimes missing the signal where it was, it came and I ignored it, and maybe it was an opportunity cost, right? But here's one that you followed. So how did you know whether to pursue that or not? Here you are, a Brit, and you're traveling all over the place, and now this Swiss guy says, "Come over and meet me here."
Yeah.
How did you know that it was legit or worth your time and effort?
Well, it was through a good friend of mine. So it was a very good friend of mine that I'd worked with in Asia. Actually, he was in the UK, but we did a joint venture together. Yeah. And he was one of these people that was extraordinarily well connected. And for some reason, I've always gravitated to people and I like connections. I like networking. I love meeting people, which is why I like what I do now.
Right.
And I was just curious, I think, and fascinated. And I think, and so when I met, first I had trust that I was going to be connected with someone that was worth my while to go and do that.
Right.
And the guy he gave me an interesting story, and it was pretty fascinating. And it seemed a bit too good to be true, to be honest. I didn't quite believe that it was real. And then went back to the UK, spent a week with my folks, and on the way back out to Hong Kong, so I started to go back for a few weeks. I went back to Switzerland, and I went to the Formula One factory, and sure enough, I'm sitting in the canteen, and the Formula One drivers are sitting next to me on a table next to me, and I'm like, this is real. Yeah, it was a sort of a pinch me moment, and I agreed to do it, and a week later or 2 weeks later, I'm in Switzerland in the snow and writing this business plan.
Amazing. I'm curious what your father and mom did. Do they both work? What were their careers like?
Yeah, my mum was a stay-at-home mum, and my father he was in the automotive business when I was young, and again nothing. He was a director of a company, but it wasn't a huge organization, and they had. I mean, we came from pretty humble background, really.
So I'm curious, was he giving you? Was he coaching you at all, giving you direction, or were you fairly independent? Because I think sometimes our parents have the best intentions to say, "Oh, that's sort of." Very risky, don't do it, or you get more of a safe security kind of job. Did he give you any advice or guidance, or are you following your gut?
No, he did. My father was always a sort of a good guiding light in my life. He's a very level-headed person. People would go to him for advice, family members would ask him for advice, and he was always good at sort of the rationale. He'd think things through very thoughtfully, but he was always quite conservative too. And so when I actually left Formula One, he didn't want me to leave it because he thought I was taking a risk leaving it. That was years later. But no, he was really good. I mean, he always gave me really good advice and was a good sounding board. And he was my best friend as a kid. I'm an only child. And so it was also kind of a wrench because I went out to Asia and, I was in my 20s and left my parents for like 5 years in Europe and was sort of out there on my own.
Yeah. It sounded like you went home for that, week or two and maybe consulted with him, and he was going to encourage you to maybe follow that
path.
Absolutely
did. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so your reality, it came to fruition. It became a reality. You're there, the Formula One team. Where did it go from there?
So I went and did the business plan, and it was supposed to be like an 8-week business plan. And I was there for 5 days in the factory, and I called up the business school and I said, "Can I defer for a year?" And they said, "Maybe." And I said, "Well, I'm going to do this anyway, and I'll come back to you in a year."
And walk us through, kind of unpack the business plan. Like what was the plan? How did you go about doing it? I don't know if a lot of people these days are doing a proper business plan. I've done several in my career, but it seems like more and more we're working ad hoc or we're working sort of, bootstrap. Talk us through how you did that.
So my philosophy of business plans is I think you always have to have a vision and a goal in mind, right? I mean, you have to have an idea. I write a lot of stuff, even when in my role today, I spend my weekends and I'll belt things out in PowerPoints because it helps me formulate my thinking.
Yeah.
And you create this vision of where you want to go and you articulate it and you have an idea of what that looks like and you visualize it. But you never always get there, right? I mean, you do something where you start off on this course or on this journey and you go a certain way down the road to it. And at some point something changes, you pivot, something changes, you adjust, and you might end up somewhere completely different, but you've got to start off on a path that gives you sort of that idea. And I think, and for me, writing a business plan like that, it was really looking at all the different pieces, how they all came together, what the end goal was. We had, Petronas at the time was investing about $80 million a year with us. And so they wanted to build a whole automotive industry and use technology, and they wanted branding and Malaysia at the time, so Petronas was the state-owned oil company, still is, in Malaysia. And their whole intention of going to Formula One was to put Malaysia on the map. And at this time, Malaysia at that time was the second highest growth economy in the world after China. So Mohammed Mahathir, who was the PM at the time, had these great ambitions for the country, phenomenal ideas.
And F1's got the exposure to the world.
Exactly right.
Put you on the world stage.
And that's exactly what he wanted. And he built a Formula One track, and he went and tapped on the door of Petronas, who was the biggest company, had the biggest bank account, and said, "You've got to put your name on a Formula One car," which is what they did. And that was kind of interesting also because it was a big shift for them because they'd never done anything like this before, firstly.
Yeah.
And secondly, it was a big culture change for them. I mean, they were a very sort of a developing country at the time, which was fascinating.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say, Red Bull was a part of that because they're very much an early leader in
Very much
influencer
so.
marketing.
Absolutely right.
And so what we're talking about basically is what we know today as influencer marketing,
Exactly right.
you know,
Yeah.
or, advertising on a
Yeah.
broader scale. But yeah, brilliant. Okay. And so were you the only one sort of managing that plan at the time? Were
So
you the only business mind in there?
so I was, yeah, sort of. I mean, the team, a lot of Formula One teams. I think this is kind of interesting. A lot of sports. I think they've changed a lot now, though. But in the early days, people that were involved in those industries were people that were passionate about them, right? And you go in and you start off, and
Yeah, they're drivers or mechanics or
and they've gone up.
OEMs at Ferrari or.
If I looked at the team that we had when I was at within Sauber, the organization, um, most of the people had come up through motorsports, and I came in and put a sort of a structure and a plan together that we put into place. We wrote the plan. We did that I did it over like 8 or 10 weeks.
Did you get any pushback from the endemic crowd?
Well, not really,
Who's
because
this outsider? What does he know about motorsports?
yeah, well, so interestingly, because the guy that I was working for was one of the main shareholders in the business, and so I went in with his backing because he had a lot of obviously clout because he had control of the company pretty much. And so the cool thing was I wasn't actually initially reporting up into the Sauber organization. I was brought in by somebody who was a shareholder, so I got access to pretty much anything in the organization. So I had that sort of power of attorney is maybe the wrong word of putting
Protection.
it. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the sponsorship and the ability to go in and ask questions and dig a little bit. But it wasn't like that. I mean, I think that you in any business like that you go into, you've got to build collaboration, you've got to build connections, you've got to win support of people, you've got to And I think I think this is a huge part of any when you run any organization. I spend an awful lot of my time selling ideas into people, winning support. You've got to get collaborators. One of the best advice I had ever had in my career was when I was in Hong Kong, and I was working with this consumer goods company in Hong Kong. My first job's out there, and I had a letter of complaint written about me. I was 25, and this guy wrote a letter of complaint. He said James is too pushy, he's a bit aggressive, and he steps on toes. And my boss at the time was a German guy, he was in his 60s, and he sat down with me one day and he said, look, James, he said, you can come in at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, you work late at night. But he said, if you don't have the people behind you, you'll never be successful. You have to win the support of the people. And that was the best advice I think I've ever had in my career. And I went back and I really thought about that. And of course, the whole weekend I was very upset that I had to sort of figure this out. I went back in the next week and I figured out a way to get quick wins and give people things. And I got support.
What'd you do? Did you bring in bagels or like?
No, I mean, I dug into the organization. I found roadblocks. I'd sit with people. I'd figure out what is making your job more difficult.
Right.
And if I can find something that I can make your job a little bit easier, just a little bit easier, and it's a win that I get, then I build trust with you.
Yes.
And you believe that I'm your advocate and your ally. And then what happens is you come and you tell me things about the organization and you give me ideas. And again, I take this through every organization I've been in. I've been in maybe 5 or 6 different industries. But the best ideas that you'll ever get in organizations, they come from the people at the coalface. They come from the people on the front line of the organization that are dealing with the clients, or they're in the sort of the trenches, right?
Yeah, they have their finger on the pulse.
Yeah, and they don't know how. So if you spend time as a leader of a company, and I spend a lot of time calling up and down a company, listening to people, and I get ideas for things. And my job in this is, as a leader of any organization, is to put a series of processes and structures into place to move the organization forward, create the vision for it. But a lot of the really good ideas come from these people on the front line. And if you can give them if you can take those and you can implement them and give them the credit for it, which of course they appreciate and is important because that builds culture and fabric of culture. But that's the thing that changes companies. I mean, you've got to be, I think you as a leader of any organization, you've got to be super accessible and you've got to listen to people. The more, and this is what every business plan I've ever written, honestly, I sit and listen to people, ask questions, be curious.
I'm really glad that you're saying it. I like to just underscore what you're saying because it's so obvious, and yet it's not intuitive.
It's not rocket science.
And I think there's a famous book that a lot of Americans read, who are coming up. It's this Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence.
Oh, it's one of the greatest books. And it's such a great book.
And under one of the core messages is, if you want to get what you want, help other people get what they want first, and then you get what you want, which is exactly
exactly right.
The principle that you were implementing.
That's such a great book. One of my favorite lines from that book was when he was at dinner with Lady Astor or something, and he sat and he was asking her questions all night, and he basically told her nothing about himself, Dale Carnegie, and she turned around at the end of the night and she said, "My, you're such a great conversationalist,
Right? You're
and
so interesting."
and she's so interesting, right?" And he said nothing, but he got all of this sort of this information. But
Yeah, it's that when you become interested, you become
that's a
interesting.
great way of saying it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
That's actually great. I like that a lot. I'm going to use that.
it's not original. I've heard it many times, but it's true, and it's I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's what Carnegie was trying to say is,
yeah,
uh, you're really trying to, and maybe this is like a Stephen Covey principle, like seek to understand before you're understood kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah, yeah.
When you really find
Absolutely.
out what the real problems are, what the obstacles are, when you listen and find out before
Mm-hmm.
trying to prescribe, or give a diagnosis. One of the examples I remember from Covey's book is, he's wearing a pair of glasses and their prescription, and he's like, I see just fine, and I see that you're having a problem seeing. Here, take my glasses.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's not the way it works, right?
Yeah.
We each have our own custom prescription,
Exactly
and we
right.
need to customize it. So I love the fact that you're talking about that, because it's applicable to whoever you are, wherever you are. Very good device. Okay, so then after a time you left.
Yep. So I stayed for 5 years in Formula One in the end, and I loved it. It was great fun. It was, but I also got to a point where I realized that it was an interesting industry at the time. It wasn't as developed as it is now. I mean, the US has changed things, but to really get on it, Formula One was controlled by a guy called Bernie Ecclestone at the time, and it was a very tight sort of community. And you either had to be really running a team, and I decided at the time, and this was probably an element where I was thinking about being a bit more risk averse, perhaps. We sold the team actually to BMW and to Credit Suisse, and for me it was a good segue. I'd been there for 5 years. I'd evolved with it. Hadn't done my MBA, and decided I wanted to go back and do it.
Did you have some equity in that company, or you were just an employee?
No, I was an employee at the time.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah, it's too bad, unfortunately. Yeah, exactly right. And even now, it would have been worth even more money. But
did you have a chance to negotiate equity at all, or it wasn't even on the table?
No, not on the table at that time in that organization.
Yeah, you were a smaller cog in the wheel, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much that; it just wasn't that sort of a structure. I mean, we had Red Bull as a partner in the business, and Peter Sauer was the other majority owner, and another guy that had brought me into the business was an owner of the business. So there wasn't really. And in those days, back in sort of the it was sort of pre.com really, wasn't it? There wasn't quite the sort of the drive for equity. And I think truthfully at the time, I wasn't as attuned to that. I think, I hadn't sort of thought about that side of wealth creation and growth and things like that.
I mention it because nowadays it's a good option.
Yeah.
When there's maybe not budget, and you're worth a lot, and the company may not have the means. Maybe they're a startup or whatever the situation is, and it's an option to negotiate, right? If you're still trying to earn what you're worth,
Yeah.
So you left after 5 years. The team was sold.
Yes.
And
then I went to Switzerland, did my MBA at IMD, which was great. IMD is a fantastic school. It's the MBA program there. We had 90 people in the course. It's a 1-year program, super intensive, and we had I think we had 40 nationalities out of 90 people. Which was just great. I mean, it was a super connection for me. And for me, the reason I did it was I felt there were a number of areas that I wanted to sort of round out my skill set. Financial analysis, modeling, organizational stuff, strategic things like that I thought would be super helpful. The network, of course, is phenomenal. So I did that, finished that, worked briefly in Zurich for a while in consulting, did a few finance raises for luxury goods companies out there that I was working on. And then I got a chance to come to LA, actually. Again, very by chance or coincidence, I met someone that had invested into a consumer goods company based out here. And this was the days sort of pre-functional beverage type stuff. And I thought, this is interesting. And I was actually doing a few deals at the time, entrepreneurially, where I was getting licenses from companies in the US, and I was doing back-to-back deals with them in the UK.
Okay.
And so I ended up out here and running a consumer goods company, doing a turnaround.
And what year is this?
This was 2003, I think. Yeah, 3.
Okay.
And so
just after the dot-com bust.
Just after the dot-com bust, yeah, exactly right. And I'd never done a turnaround before. This was, my background was the luxury goods industries, and this was sort of out of my field. But it was great. I mean, I came in and ran this business, smallish organization, rolled my sleeves up, got into it, was, making all these changes in the business, turning it around, and running everything from one day in the warehouse, the next day the finances and strategy. It was great. And then we ended up selling that business, and that was in 2006, I think. I can't remember now. So that was interesting exit. So that was good for me. And then I still hadn't wasn't sure what I wanted to do after that. And this was the opportunistic element. And I got a phone call, again, chance meeting. Someone met me and referred me to a guy in another recruiting firm, a headhunter. And they were looking for someone to do a fractional ownership in yachts. So this was at about the time when NetJets was around. And the funny thing was, I actually knew Exclusive Resorts at that time because I'd studied the model, because I was looking at this project. So I went in and did this fractional ownership business. It was a group of guys in Florida, a ton of money. And they had owned yachts and they had chartered yachts. And they thought we should create a NetJets for yachts. And they had a name for the business and they had a checkbook. So I went into that business again, started out writing a business plan for them, put a series of partnerships together. And we did partnerships with like 4 or 5 large organizations that were well funded. And then
it's sort of an Airbnb model for yachts, or you said the NetJets.
Yeah, it's like NetJets. So basically the idea is that instead of owning a yacht outright that you're going to use for 5 or 6 weeks a year, you buy a share of it and you buy like an 1/8 fraction of it. It's like a Picasso model. This was way before the Picasso concept.
Right.
So you buy an 1/8 share of it, you get access to it for a certain number of weeks a year, someone else manages it for you. And you put a hospitality level on the top. We were talking to Horst Schultz from WestPaces, the guy that built Ritz-Carlton. We were talking to NetJets about partnering. We were talking to Benetti Yachts about partnering, a range of things like that. So we had a great roster of brands behind it.
Absolutely.
And then Lehman collapsed. And everything fell out of the market. And the guys that had money initially all of a sudden didn't have the money to invest anymore because they had automotive businesses and things that were all or distribution businesses or retailers.
Yeah, we were talking off camera. That's September 2008. I know that very well.
Right. Yeah,
because that's where I was.
Yeah.
In this little startup.
Yeah.
Holding the bag. So tough times.
It was really tough. And so we then went out and said, well, what do we do? Do we go out and see if we can find some more financing? So I started going and knocking on doors, and I went to this company called Ferretti Group, which is a big Italian yacht manufacturer. And I went and I was introduced to a guy that was one of the shareholders, and I met the attorney, the attorney actually introduced me to Ferretti Group. And he said, you should go meet these guys. So I went and met them in the Four Seasons in Miami, and I pitched these guys across the table about investing in this business. And I gave them one of my best pitches, and I got a phone call a week later, and they said they're not going to invest, the attorney said. But I said, okay, that's fine, but I appreciate your time. And he said, but they want to hire you. Huh. And I said, well, what for? They want a GM of the US. And I said, well, I've got to finish this project, and I'm committed to this. And so I ran that to a point where we couldn't run anymore. And after about 4 or 5 months, I called them back and I said, are you still looking for someone? They said, yes. And so I had probably one of the strangest interviews of my life at the Cannes Boat Show on the back of a 43-meter yacht with 7 Italians. I spoke no Italian at the time. And they would ask me these questions, and I would answer in English, and they would go off into Italian. I had no idea where this was going. But anyway, I got the job. And ended up running commercial operations for this company called Ferretti Group for the Americas. And did that in the US. And then they sent me to Italy for a while. I was living in Miami. And I did commercial operations, sales and marketing for the group globally, which was super fun. And a big manufacturer. We sold everything from the smallest boat we built was a 33-foot Riva, which was $1 million. The biggest boat we built was $150 million probably.
Wow.
Which was 80-meter yacht.
This is like a Jeff Bezos style, luxury yacht.
Yeah, it was great. It was great business. It was super fun. And the great thing about that was that the product was just, being in the yards was fantastic, and the product was so amazing. And it was a great business to be in. Did that, and then came back to the US and ran the Americas through until I think 2016, and then
I'm sensing a pattern, which is you seem to gravitate to little subcultures, or in other words, little communities. If I'm picking up on the pattern here, it seems like several hundred or thousand little steps. Even from your earliest start in Hong Kong and back in different places, brought you to where you are today into this business model of communities. Is that the case? Am I picking up the right pattern?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a sort of an element of, I think I've always been fairly opportunistic in terms of what I've done. I say to people all the time that I think the two most important things that as you think about your career, and I say this to people in the company all the time, is that your reputation and your relationships are the two most important things you'll ever have, right?
Right.
Everything, education you can get, other things you can do. But keeping connections with people, building bridges, maintaining those bridges, and being someone that is relied upon. You've proven something, you've built something, you're trusted. That's the thing that opens doors, and that's what it's always been in my life. I've always had people that have. I had a lot of mentors. I think my father was a mentor for me, and he passed away. Actually, he passed away I lost both my parents in 2000, 2001, within about 9 months of each other.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
And that might have also been sort of one of the things that triggered me, I think, to become more opportunistic. But I've always sought out mentors in organizations. I've always been very lucky to have people that have supported me and backed me. And I think the other thing that's probably a thread of my career is I've always done transformations, which is, and I didn't actually realize that probably until a few years ago. But every business I go into, it's here and I take it to here, or I'm part of the team that takes it to here. And usually it's a sort of a 5 to 6 to 7 year process.
You're the turnaround guy.
And I'm not sure turnaround is sort of. I mean, I think a bit more transformation, because I think some of the businesses were in a decent shape when I got there. I just took them to another level.
Yeah.
Some of them were turnarounds.
Yeah.
Like Exclusive Resorts wasn't a turnaround, but we just evolved it pretty significantly over 5 or 6 years.
From good to better, or better to best. Better
to best, I think. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. So that, I think, is sort of the thread. And then with Ferretti Group, we took it out of the crisis, really, in sort of, I got there in 2009. I was there till 2016, and we ended up selling it to a big Chinese group, which was fascinating, because I've lived in a lot of different places, and at the time I think I was the most international guy in the world. I was an English guy living in Miami, working for an Italian company that we sold to Chinese, selling yachts to Colombians, Mexicans, Venezuelans, Americans, and Canadians. But it was fun.
But you'd done all the work prior, right? And that's another maybe lesson that we can extract, which is this idea that you can't fake being good at push-ups, right?
Good.
You have to do the work to get good at push-ups.
You do.
And you had done all of that groundwork, that legwork, that networking, that friendshipping, that relationship building from the get, right? And that brought you, or enabled you, to be Mr. International at the time.
Yeah.
A Brit living in Miami doing business with the world.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen overnight. That's forethought. That's preparation. That's when they say, luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here.
That's right.
Yeah. You can't just waltz into that without doing the work. Good on you. And so that brought you then to a point where you were ready for exclusive resorts.
Not quite. I had a step between that. So 2016, I went to private aviation.
Okay.
And so I got a call from another company, another headhunter. All headhunter seems to be my transitions, but and they were looking for someone to run a company that was owned by TPG, Texas Pacific. It's a big private equity firm. And I went. It was a private security company called Gavin DeBecker and Associates, which is actually down here in LA. And I interviewed for that job. And at the end of the interview, the last guy to interview me was a very cool guy, Brad Stewart, a really good friend of mine. And he said, "Why do you want to do this job?" And I said, "Well, I think it's really interesting. It's they're dealing with this very high net worth clients and security." And he said, "I think you're going to hate it." And I'd been like all the way through the interview at this point. I'm thinking, I've got this job. And anyway, he said, "You should work in private aviation." And he was running this company called Exojet at the time. And he said, "You should come work for Exojet." And so I ended up going and working with Exojet.
Okay, so he's trying to steal you away.
Yeah, basically. I mean, and it was awesome. It was good. And I was living in the East Coast, and I moved to San Francisco to work with Brad and the team. And Exojet was probably the best run company I'd ever worked for in my life. I mean, super smart guys, service industry. I think, and I'd never been in the service industry before. I'd always sold products, like expensive products.
Yachts.
Yachts and those sort of industries is an interesting spot. Even Formula One was kind of a unique space, but I think the private aviation industry is probably one of the most extreme service environments, because you have these people that pay $30,000-$40,000 to travel from San Francisco or LA to New York, and you can go and buy a ticket for $2,000 and you get to the same place, but your expectations are so much higher.
Quite a bit, yeah.
And then if things go wrong, like if you have 5 mechanicals in a row or the plane doesn't come or something, your patience level drops dramatically.
Sure. High expectations.
Yeah. And so I learned enormous amount working with those people. And my colleagues that I worked with they were the best in the business. And it was fun. It was a great environment. And that was really well run. We then ended up selling that business to VistaJet, another big group in Europe. Similar pattern here. You can see the patterns of my career. and I was going to go to VistaJet, and that took me to 2019. And I got a call from this recruiter about exclusive resorts. Wasn't looking. And then that's when I met Philippe and I met Steve, and I liked them, and I thought these guys are good people, and that was my connection. It was interesting time because it was, as we were talking about earlier off the podcast.
Let me ask you about, you're sort of playing this low key, playing a little hard to get, I guess. You weren't looking perhaps, but so give some advice to people who, let me set it up by saying there's some people out there who make it very obvious that they are looking for their next career move.
Yeah.
There's a platform called LinkedIn, and then you can be very overt about it, and it's sort of annoying and a bit of a turnoff, right? It's off-putting when you see someone so obnoxiously so promoting or doing. So what advice can you impart to people who are actively looking, but they don't want to act like they're looking? Do you know what I'm saying?
Look, I mean, the best, in my view, it's back to this reputational relationships, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want people that are your advocates.
Right.
You want people that you've done it. Like if anyone ever calls me and is seeking a reference for someone, or if I'm seeking a reference, the number one question you ask is, would you hire this person again? Right. That's the question.
So are you saying you should definitely speak to so-and-so and then ask them about me? Or
no, I think it's more about just do a really good job, right?
Right.
Because that will open doors. Like I work for this company that's owned by this guy called Steve Case. I think he's phenomenal. And I love working with him. I love working with the organization. We've got an incredible team. My career, if I do a great job with Steve Case, that will open the door to other opportunities for me, right?
Yeah.
That's how I see it. And I think if you find people in organizations that find mentors, look for people that will back you, right? I've been super lucky that most of the people in boards and companies that I've worked with have my back 100%. And I try to impart that with my executive team, right? I want them to think and know that I back these guys 100%. And if you screw up, that's fine, right? If you fail fast. That's the Ray Dalio thing, right? Do it, try things, we'll pick it up and we'll move on.
Right.
But you've got my support to do it. And then people are way more creative to do stuff like that. But to your question of how to look for opportunities, most really great opportunities come from people you know, right? Because they're out supporting you and they'll connect you. And if you have a good reputation, I mean, you can put stuff on LinkedIn and do whatever you want. And sure, it's a great promotional platform when you get out in front of people. But at the end of the day, when you're in that process of in discussions about somebody with a job, you want someone that is going to be the reference on the phone that is the champion, right? And is going to advocate for you and say, you got to hire Brian. He's awesome. He's going to crush it in your organization. This is someone that you want to have on your team, right? That's what makes the difference. And that's what opens the doors. And it's such a small world. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that surprises me the most.
Well, I'm also hearing another little word of wisdom, which is proximity. So going back full circle to your business planning days when you had a goal or objective, you said very clearly, whatever your North Star is, you don't always get there, but you have that as the target. And it sounds like every little bit along the way, including the yacht business and the high-end jet transport, you were in the proximity of where you wanted to go, and then you were dissuaded not to take that opportunity, but then offered another one. You were in the proximity of opportunity, so you had the forethought to move your bones in that direction, not knowing exactly what was going to happen, and then being opportunistic when it came your way, and then pivoting and going that way. So proximity is also possibly a lesson here, which is just get yourself in the area, in the vicinity, so that your personality, your skills, whatever can be discovered, and then you can pivot and go your way.
I think also having a brand, right? I think you almost have to. It sounds a bit cheesy to say this, but I think you have to find your niche, right? I mean, my niche, I think, sounds a bit crass, but I sell expensive things to wealthy people and do transformations. That's what I do, right? And I've seen, and I think I'm a little unique. I don't sound arrogant by saying this, but I mean, I've worked in Formula One, private aviation, luxury yachting, and travel and hospitality. And I've seen across those industries. Another thing, actually, I think is kind of interesting, which goes back to one of your questions earlier about why did I move out of Formula One, was I never wanted to be stereotyped too much in an industry. Someone said to me early on in my career that as you evolve, you kind of want to move from being a specialist to a generalist because it opens more opportunities for you. And if I'd stayed in Formula One, I would have got stuck at some point. If I'd stayed in the yachting industry, I would have got stuck at some point.
Right.
But I have transferable skills. So I think figuring out what is your skill set, what is your brand, what do you know, what is the thing that you can deliver, where's the value you can provide, and figuring that out, I think is a really important thing. And then I think the second thing is networking your way around that and making sure that you connect. I mean, I love meeting people. I mean, I'm out doing it all day long, and I mean, you have a curiosity. It's fascinating hearing people's stories, and that sort of helps you build and develop your network, and you know, you get known. And when you're in an industry, like I still have a ton of contacts in private aviation, and I think I've got a pretty good reputation in the industry. I now have a lot of contacts in travel and hospitality, and I know a lot of people, and I'm building a reputation. We've been lucky with exclusive resorts. The business has done well, so that also helps, right? But
so break it down. What is exclusive resorts for those who've never heard of it?
Sure, it's a great question. So we're a private membership club. We've been around for 20 years. We have 4,500 member families. We own and operate 350 homes, mainly North America, Caribbean, and also a few in Europe. We have a series of experiences and things. And it's really a product or a platform for people. It's a travel solution for people that are looking to find a great way to vacation and connect with a community.
And these are private homes?
They're private homes, yeah.
So this is not like being a part of, say, a Marriott Bonvoy where they have 30 different brands and you could go stay at the Ritz-Carlton or you could stay at a Marriott. This is a private home. So this is right. And this is also not Airbnb. This is an exclusive network, so you've got to join. There's membership dues.
Exactly right. Yeah.
What are the dues to join?
So it starts at $200,000 initiation fee, and it goes up to $650,000 as the initiation fee, and then you pay annual dues every year on top of that. So it's a rarefied space because there's no try before you buy. So you can't come and say, well, can I go and stay in Costa Rica or can I go and stay in wherever? And if I like it, maybe I'll join. So what that means is that the majority of members that come to us, they know another member. So it makes it a very nice community. About 80% of our members that join us, they know somebody part of the community. And we've been around for a long time, and it's also a long-term commitment, right? Because you're signing up. It's like a country club. So you sign up for a 10-year membership or a 30-year membership. You pay the dues up front. You commit to an annual number of days that you travel every year. You can flex up and down with that.
So you have the dues are received up front.
So the initiation fee is received up front. So it's like a joining fee. And then we charge, and so you come to me, and so you join the club, and you pay your initiation fee, and you'll pay your first year of dues. So if you're going to travel at 30 days, you'll pay for your 30 days or your 45 days, whichever tier of membership.
I see.
We put those days in your account, and then you can travel across the system. So the product-wise, we have the homes, which are all 3 to 5 bedroom large homes in destinations that you can.
Yeah, in Napa somewhere.
We're in Stone, we're in Napa, we're in Aspen, we're in Deer Valley, we're in Vail.
Resort towns, yeah.
We're in resort towns. We also have a lot of homes in resorts. So we're in Rosewoods, we're in Four Seasons, we're in Auberges, we're in Ritz-Carltons and things like that. And then we also have another product, which is experiences. And by the way, the homes are only available to members. So you can't access the home unless you're a member. And you can take your family and friends, and it's a little bit like a second home. So if you join, but you want to send friends, you can do that, right? It's like a second home. It doesn't have to be you. You can use it. You buy your days, use them as you want. And then we have experiences, which I think is a super exciting part of our business. So we do about 22 departures a year on 7 different itineraries. And last year we did trips out to Uruguay, Argentina, Botswana, India, Nepal.
Okay.
We chartered a 757. We went around the world, 9 countries in 21 days with 75 members.
So these are on tours or excursions or
exactly, yeah. I mean, and
experiences.
We did I went on an Antarctica trip over New Year, which was amazing.
Wow.
And it's just members that go, and then we do events. So we take members to Formula One, Kentucky Derby, Wimbledon, Masters, things like that. And then we do other events to bring the community members together. So we just did 3 events recently, which Thomas Keller hosted with us, where we do dinners for 40, 50 members, and he hosts that, and just unique experiences. The differentiator for us is really around 4 things. One is the service element. So it's very high level of service. We give you a vacation ambassador when you first join us, and that person manages all your trips. You have a full-time concierge, more like a butler really, on site that fills the home with your groceries and your wine and everything.
Sounds amazing.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
Sign me up.
And then the other thing I think is really important for us is just the trust. I mean, we've had members that have been with us for 15, 20 years, and they've seen generations grow up with us, and we have such a consistent product, and people trust the brand so much, we can put things in front of them. And then the third thing I think that I'm incredibly passionate about is our community. We have 4,500 members, all obviously, given the nature of the expenses, they're fairly affluent, but they're people with fascinating stories. And it's cool because what I really like about it is in the other industries I worked in, like working in private aviation, it's very transactional. Selling a yacht is very transactional. But in this business, I get to meet these people who have taken their families and they have these life-changing experiences and things. And I get to sit down with them and have dinner with them and spend time with them, and they've become my friends. I mean, we've got the most amazing, people who run companies whose brands people who are in the public eye. We have another gentleman that's become a really good friend of mine. He was the commanding officer of the adversary program at the Top Gun Naval Academy. I mean, the coolest people with the coolest stories.
So I want to know, if we're zooming out a little bit and we are applying these principles to the businesses that my audience runs, how are you finding your audience, or is the audience finding you? Are you relying 100% on word of mouth, that it's a soft pass or a white glove treatment, like referral basis? You give the right handshake or knock the door, and like that's how it's a velvet rope kind of experience. Or tell me about how you know what these people want and need.
So we have it's a small community, right? I mean, we have 4,500 families, and we only bring in 200 new families a year, and also we have to calibrate that because.
So is it capped, or is it?
So we cap it in the sense that we can only bring enough new families in based on the availability that we have.
Right.
So we have to measure it and calibrate it.
So 300 properties.
We don't cap it.
Okay.
We have 350 homes, but if we wanted to bring more members in, we'd have to increase the homes, and we're doing that anyway.
Okay.
So
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, we've gone through a sort of an interesting journey over the last 3 years because we're now at a point where we've optimized the size of the portfolio and the product to the member base, and so we're sort of stepping it up as we go forward.
Right.
So
because there's demand.
Well, there's demand, but also we could, if we were to bring in 300 members this year, I probably wouldn't have the product availability for that. I have to get the product availability to support that.
Right. Is there a waiting list? Do you have people?
No, not really. I mean, it's sort of by invitation in the sense that the way it works is we typically look for people that know people in the community.
Right. But I assume there's like an application process where they.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it's not quite as formal as that. What we do is most of the business, as I say, comes to us through some sort of referral, or it's a member connection, or it's someone who knows us.
Right.
We get to know them. But obviously, if they're going to stroke a check for $250,000, they're going to call their friends and say, "Is this the right thing for us?" So we want people that are part of the community that we think will add value to that as well.
Right.
And the way these things sort of come into play, we've been probably, I think, over the last few years, we've not really invested very heavily in our brand. We've started doing that a lot more. The other thing that we've pivoted more recently is to bring in more younger families, because we're a great solution for young families who want to travel. I mean, you can take a young family and go and stay in a Four Seasons or in a large hotel, and you're paying $1,500 a night a room for sort of 4 or 5 rooms, and then you're still going into the restaurant and shared spaces. Whereas with us, you go into a house. And you've got the family, and you've got the kitchen area and the living area, and you've got like a swimming pool and things like that. So you've got your own enclosed space.
Right.
But a great solution for that. So we're trying to do more of that. But I mean, to your question in terms of how we bring people in, it's a number of things really. It's we're getting out. We reinvented the brand a lot over the last 3 years. We've done a lot more community engagement initiatives. And the cool part about it is converting people when they come. So we invite them to these events. So we do an event with 50 members. And we have 5 tables of 10, and we bring in a new family that's considering the club. And we sit them on a table with members, and the magic happens. And these people, the members, sell the club, because they're so passionate about it. So that's how we make sure that when we identify and assimilate new members into the club, that they're a fit, because it's kind of like a marriage, right? They see the people that they want to be part of this community, and we encourage people that are similar in terms of like-mindedness to be part of our group.
So it makes me think: are there prospective members that are uninvited or maybe rejected? They can't join the community? Do you have strict rules? I'm thinking about, like, if you go try to get an apartment in New York City, and the neighbors are sort of on the board, and they get to evaluate who the next tenant is, and if you don't have the right personality or the right pedigree, you might not get that place. Is it kind of like
No,
that?
we're not quite like that. I mean, I think, we like to say we're elite, but not elitist, right? Well, I think
Right.
we're a brand that is, and if you look at most of our members, actually, we're not a. Most of our members, they are very family orientated people. I mean, they're not like super flashy people.
Right.
We have a lot of families who, they're wealthy, but you wouldn't necessarily know it. And even the ones that are wealthy, it's really fascinating when you sort of, most of them are entrepreneurs, right? And a lot of them come from humble beginnings and have done really well. And I mean, a very good friend of mine, he's actually a really good friend of mine who I've got to know through the club, and him and his wife have become very good friends of mine. And he's done incredibly well in the property industry. But they're quite frugal, right? I mean, we have a store in our town that is our sort of like go-to, but his wife won't shop there because she says it's too expensive, and she drives 5 miles to the Whole Foods because it's so. There's always that element, right? And I think these sort of the origin stories, as you talk about, is kind of interesting when you meet people. But we're certainly not. I wouldn't want people to think that we're sort of an elite private club where you have to go through a sort of a process to be vetted and to come in. It's more of a self-selection process,
Right.
where we want you to see the people that are in the club, and if you feel you're part of that, you'll meet them and you'll kind of assimilate into that.
Yeah, the community model is, it's booming today. It's like sort of everything and nothing has changed. There's always been, tribes of people, private communities, exclusive communities.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. It's a very good business model. And even if you have a limited, 4,500 family head count, it's still, a very um, potent formula.
Yep.
I think about like another community like Tiger 21, for
Yep.
example, right?
Exactly right.
It's got a pretty hefty membership due, and then they want to put like-minded people together who are able to come together. So I want to push back a little bit and get a little bit clearer on this, just so I understand. How do you know? So you're at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know what your members want? Like, are you asking them? Do you have your ear to the ground listening somehow? And then, how are you then implementing that um, intelligence and putting it into your business plan?
That's a great question as well. Lots of different ways. I mean, I think this is where the sort of, in any company that you run, I think you've got to be super curious. I think you've got to be open. I think you've got to speak to people. I think you've got to speak to, as I said earlier, people on the front line. You've got to speak to members all the time. So we have a number of different channels. We have, there's a strong relationship between the vacation ambassador that knows the member. So if your vacation ambassador, when they're working with you, we get to know a lot about you, right? I mean, you're traveling anywhere from 30 to 100 days with us. So we know what food you like, what wine you like, what activities you like. We know how you like the home setup. We like if you've got idiosyncrasies that you like, if you want us to take the ice out of the ice machine. We know all these things about you. And so we have a pretty good insight into those sort of things.
I see. So that ambassador's in the front lines, and they're really
very
making
connected,
communication,
very connected,
passing back information. By the way, this family likes this and not that.
Yeah, and we institutionalize a lot of that too. So we know that. The other thing we do, which I'm really big on, is we do surveys. So we do 20,000 vacations a year in the system. And we actively encourage members to do surveys. The surveys come in the day before. They are consolidated into a file, into a spreadsheet. And we disseminate those surveys out to about 150 people the next morning at 7 a.m. It's the first thing I read every single morning. I open my email and I read the member surveys. I want to know what people are saying, what they like, what they don't like.
Right.
And it's good. And then we have someone who is sort of a coordinator of that. And they read all the surveys, and we send another email out to that same group, and we do all the shout outs. Mm-hmm. If someone had a great experience, we say, this person had a great experience. And it's cool because what that does is at 7 o'clock in the morning, the first thing that you read, you get really fired up because you read these great things about members traveling the system.
Yeah, you get feedback.
And you get feedback. On the flip side of that, if someone hasn't had a great experience, it's in there and you see it. And, back to my learnings in my private aviation days, I'm a great believer in any service situation. If you have an experience that is less than perfect or suboptimal, if I respond to you really quickly and I'm all over it, you'll give me a bit of a pass, right?
Right.
And you'll give me some time to go and fix it. If I make you wait, your frustration level just goes right up, right?
Yeah, or if you repeat the offense, then
and it's harder for me to come back. So I have a term I use in the organization, hashtag on it. And I say this to people all the time. I'm like, I don't necessarily want you to give me a long email of what you're going to do or how you're going to do it. If you send me an email and say, I've got this, and just put hashtag on it, and I know you're going to do it, you got to do it.
Yeah, solve it.
But solve it, fix it. And so, and we have a very rapid escalation process if things go wrong. So, but to your question was how do we get the sort of information on the members? So that's another source that we get. I spent a lot of time. I mean, I was on this trip. I went to Antarctica over the New Year, which is bucket list trip, right? I mean, it was a 10-day trip down on this brand new yacht down into Antarctica, and it was fabulous. And my wife didn't come with me, but I went on my own. And she's like, "Where are you going? This big trip and everything." And we had 130 members on the trip, and over 10 days, I made it my mission to have a breakfast, a lunch, or a dinner with every single member family on that boat, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because I can have a conversation like this,
pressing the flesh, yeah,
and I can hear what do you like, what do you not like, and I'm trial ballooning ideas, right? I'm like, what if we did this? What do you think about that? What if we did that? What is good? What's bad? And so I'm getting all these ideas, and of course I'm coming back and I'm firing off emails, and people going crazy because I'm sending stuff. But
and actually, out of 4,500. A population of 100 plus is actually pretty good.
It's really good.
Size.
Yeah.
It's
really good.
So that's pretty clear to me. Let's go back to the ambassador for a second, because that position seems critical.
It's critical. Absolutely critical.
How do you pick those people? Like, what characteristics do those people have?
It's really interesting. I think that I can talk about culture for hours. I'm a big believer in organizational culture, and I think in any organization, I think you have to set the culture first. I mean, everyone talks about the fact that culture always trumps strategy, which for me, I'm a firm believer in that.
That's Peter Drucker right there.
That's right, exactly. And if you get your culture right in an organization, and I believe in open communication, transparency, people being empowered, pushing responsibility down in organizations. I want to hire people that will get things done. I want to encourage people to take risks and make mistakes and try new things. And I also want to create an environment or a culture in our organization where people get the chance to grow and do new things and try new things, because if they develop, right? So I think if you can develop that in an organization, that's what helps people sort of expand. And so to your question, how do we hire ambassadors? Good people attract good people. Right, and if you hire a team, like I think an organization is like the body. If you have like an infection or a foreign organ in there, it's sort of the body will find some way to expel that out of the system, right?
Yeah.
And I think organizations are like that. I think if you create a strong culture, what happens is people come in, and in the hiring process, they see the people and they want to be part of that. I have a mission in our organization. I want us to be an employer of choice. I want a line around the block of people that want to come and join our organization. I want them to be excited about working here.
Yeah.
And we're super lucky that we've got some phenomenal people. And part of that also is, it's kind of an interesting organization too, because we are a very tenured company. So I've been there for 3 years, and I was introduced the other day, we were at this event actually, and the head of who runs our experiences, she got up at this event and she said, I want to introduce our new CEO. And I'm like, I've been here for 3 years, but she's been here for 18.
Right.
Right. And so our average tenure of VPs and above is 11 and a half years. Average tenure across the company is 5.5.
Yeah.
And what's happened with that cultural shift, a lot of these people have been there for a longer time. We've given them new opportunities, and they've really raised up to that. So the ambassador role is critical.
I imagine almost, I've heard that there's like a butler school, a school for butlers.
There is, yeah.
Right. And do you have a training program for them, and you put them through a rigorous program? And I just imagine that role it's like, that's really the front line of everything.
Absolutely right. I mean, so we call them concierges. It's like a butler effectively, because they do all your planning, they provision a home for you, they'll do everything you need.
Yeah, they'll go grab you food if you need it. I mean,
exactly right.
Fix your luggage gets lost, they're going to track it down and
everything.
Yeah.
So
whatever you need.
And it takes the sort of the risk out of your vacation, right? I mean, the two elements of risk in vacation, like if you you can go to a villa rental company or something like that, right? And you can spend, a ton of money on renting this fabulous home. And until you actually get there and put the key in the door and you open the door, you're never quite sure what's on the other side, right? And
do you have enough towels or,
or even is the place, did the pictures look better than what you actually get?
Sure.
And then when you do that, your kind of deal then is with the host of the villa, and you're sort of on your own a little bit. And look, I mean, heavy meetings can do a great job, but we take the risk out of that, right? Firstly, we own and operate all of the locations, and if something goes wrong, we're going to fix it,
right? And
we're going to bring you back, and we're going to make it right, and we'll be all over it, and so traveling gives you that sort of level of peace of mind in the system. But with the concierges, we train them. You're always with somebody So when you're on site, there is always an exclusive resorts dedicated individual that is working with you.
Right.
So wherever you are, it's not like you're going outside of our system. So we're always going to figure that out. And we train those people within our way of doing things, and it works really well.
Yeah. So let's go back to the model. I want to make sure I understand piece by piece. So prospective members.
Yep.
There's an upfront membership cost. What does that cost again?
It's anything from sort of, it's about $200,000 up to about over $600,000 is the initiation fee.
Okay. And that's the one-time initiation fee.
That's right, yeah.
And it depends on what level of experience you have, whether it's just vacation homes or if you want to have the...
No, it's not so much the type of experience, it's more, so the $200,000 membership, where that starts is a 10-year membership.
I see.
And then you can go up to a 30-year membership, which is more expensive. But then there's all sorts of other add-ons, which gives you special booking privileges and access, earlier access, advanced reservations, and things like that you get.
And if you start at the base, can you grade up?
Absolutely, 100%.
Right, so you want to maybe mitigate your risk or figure out what it's like. So you try it on for size.
Yep.
And then you can add on a la carte style.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so it's 200,000 to $500,000-ish, 600,000, and then additionally, to stay at the properties, the cost is...
So it's a fixed rate per night. So, and this is the sort of the fourth value element that I actually didn't mention earlier. So you pay, the equivalent is $15.95 a night. We don't really do it that because it's a club model. So you buy a fixed number of days. But if you're buying 30 days, you're paying about $45,000 for the year. And if you break that down, then you have to amortize your initiation fees over that. But if you look at that compared to what you would normally pay, like if you go and stay in a really good 5-star resort today, I was talking to a member recently who was staying up in Whistler actually, and the Four Seasons in Whistler over President's Day weekend, you're probably paying about $1,600 a night for a 1-bedroom unit.
Sure.
Whereas you pay that pretty much for one of our homes and you get the whole home. So the value proposition is off the charts. And we can do that because we own the homes or a significant part of the portfolio, and we can do blended rates across the platform. So, so that's where there's a huge amount of value there when you look and you're traveling in the system.
Got it. And then additional fees are just per experience or per...
Sort of, yeah. So we do. So for most of the homes that you'll stay in, we do. It's one planned day for one night, and then for some of the experiences, there are additional fees. So, for example, like if you do the private jet trip, is a good example of that. I mean, we can't do that in those rates, so there is an extra expense that we put on top of that. So a lot of the experiences will carry what we call a per diem with them.
Okay.
The private jet trip's kind of extreme. We do. I mean, that's about $150,000 a head, in addition to using your planned days for that. But I mean, that thing sold out in like 2 hours. It was crazy. But yeah, so there's elements there where for some experiences you'll pay extra, but for the majority of stuff in the portfolio and in the residence collection, it is one planned day for one night. So the value is incredible.
So what do you think out of that population? What percentage do you think are in it just for the networking or the relationships? Is that 50% or 80%?
No,
20%?
I mean, people join for the travel, right? I mean, I like to say people join for the travel, but they stay for the community, because I think people don't think about the community when they first join.
Yeah.
So when they're thinking about whether they become a member, they become a member because it's the security, it's the peace of mind, it's the consistency, it's the service element that we provide, it's the value that we offer in terms of comparisons.
Yeah.
That's why they join.
Okay, so it is different than a Tiger 21.
Oh yeah,
because I think, and I can't speak for them, but I would guess that near 100% of the people join
is the networking and
for the networking, the access to people and information. So
for us, it's sort of the access to the people. I think for many people when they first join, they don't join because of that, and in many respects, it's probably not even in their sort of their consideration set when they join. But when they join, and we have sort of phases of membership, which I kind of like to talk about. We have a lot of people join us when they have young families. We're a great way to travel. We're good value. You stay in the homes. You're not in a hotel. It's fantastic. And we're great for kids. And then when the kids get a bit older and they're starting to get to a point where they've got friends and girlfriends and boyfriends and own interests and things like that, and you want to then bring them back to family, so you sort of bribe them to go on vacation with you because you're saying, let's go back to Costa Rica or let's go back to
Switzerland,
to Cabo
do the Alps or something.
Wherever, yeah. And then there's a point where all of a sudden, and life travels fast, kids are up, they're grown, they're gone, and you're sitting there with your significant other thinking, we never went to Japan, or we never did New Zealand, or we never did that bucket list trip.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have all these trips that we do where you can go and do the safaris, or you go to Japan, or you go to China, what do you want to do? And then that opens this whole new world. And those are the trips that people go on as a couple typically, or sometimes you have solo travelers now as well that will go on these trips. When I was on the Antarctica trip, we had 130 members, and 8 of the people on that trip were solo travelers. Mm. And the nice thing is you go on these trips and you're on a boat with friends and in a community and in a club, and you can sit down next to anyone and people welcome you as part of that.
Yeah, there's safety and security. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And then when you and you build these connection relationships, and quite often you might end up traveling with people, and these people become your friends. And and then you go on another trip with them. Like we have one family I was talking to earlier, they're doing 5 continents with us this year. And they will see other members on this trip, on other trips, and they stay in touch and they become friends. And that's the community element of it. And what, for me, the next generation of that, which I'm really intrigued about, is how do we evolve that? And the things like people like Tiger 21 and YPO are really good at are those sort of things. And what's interesting is, I get calls all the time from people. I would say about 25% of our members fly privately, right? And people call me all the time about private aviation. Who should I use? What should I do? What questions should I ask? Can you give me referrals? And even yachting, chartering yachts, people call me. And I would like us to be a sort of a platform where we become a go-to for people, where we can offer those broader services. And I think for us, the next evolution of the brand is doing a couple of things. One is untapping that community and getting people talking. I just get such a kick out of the people that I meet. They've got fascinating backgrounds and stories. That's one element. The other element is, and this is the interesting thing, our members are spending, and this blows my mind every time I think of this, our members are spending about between $100 and $200 million a year on leisure travel outside of us as well. So how do I get access to that, right?
Right.
And we have the trust where if I go back and I give them a product that says we can help you with your flights or your hotels, whatever else, that's another area for us. I think we can provide services, and members want to use us for that, but we should have a product for it.
Right.
And then there's other, also, I can talk about this for hours, but the other areas for us as a company is we don't have, unless you're going to give us a check for $200,000, I don't have a product for you. And there's plenty of people traveling, spending $50,000 a year on travel. And so how can we sort of move down into, when I say down, it seems crazy to say $50,000 a year is moving down, but how can we move into a market that is more accessible for a broader market sector? Mm-hmm. And that's the next frontier. And we spent the last 3 years kind of reinventing the company internally. The product hasn't changed very much, but we've changed a lot of processes and systems and accountability, and we're much more efficient than we've ever been. Company's performing better than it's ever performed. The last 3 years for us, COVID to some extent has been an interesting opportunity because it's brought people to homes and our product. We've leveraged that opportunity.
So outside of word of mouth, how are you getting the word out? How are you advertising?
Well, we do so a lot of different ways. We have we rebuilt our public website, which has been a fantastic thing. We just hit 100,000 followers on Instagram this weekend, which I was super proud about because we had like 1,000 3 years ago, and the team has done an amazing job. We do a lot of events. We do. Obviously, we do the other channels. We do digital advertising. We were in the New York Times recently. We've got a great PR program that we've done. I think it was over the last couple of years, we've been in New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. And so we're always using sort of those channels. We drive a lot of content. We have an internal magazine that we do. So there's lots of channels that we do to sort of promote and market the brand out there.
I would guess the most powerful source is the member.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're doing all the work for you.
And even, but it's always, there's always this, it's really multi-touch as well, right? So what happens is someone will hear about us, they'll read about us, they'll see an ad in the New York Times, they'll read about something in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post. And then they'll look something up, and they might see us on Instagram, and they may go to the website. They'll read some content.
Yeah, you have several touch points to be able to reach people. So this series is called Behind the Brand.
Yes.
And you've done a lot of brand work. First of all, how would you define brand and what branding is? And then my second question is going to be, what is the Exclusive Resorts brand? So
that's a really good question. To me, I think brand is very much about what you stand for. It's about your values. It's your belief system. It is the essence of really how you differentiate in the marketplace. I think that to me is really what a brand is all about. I think there's multiple different elements of that, but I think any brand has really got to represent the core DNA of your business. And it's got to be something that when people look at that and they hear the backstory behind it, it stands behind that. I mean, we have one of the things, the terms that we use a lot internally is life is too short for should haves. And that is what our brand is. And we believe that, time travels quickly and 1 minute you can be with your daughter walking down the beach holding hands, and the next minute she's off to college, and then the next minute she's getting married, and the next minute. And these precious moments, I think we miss out on these things. And I think we have a sort of a philosophy in our organization that I think we went through an era for many years where everything was all about work and it was all about being productive and things. But some of the best things that you can do for yourself is giving yourself that time out where you can go and you can take a vacation, you decompress. And the best ideas always come from when you're sitting on a beach or you're walking or you're away from that. So we try and give people that opportunity to do that and to build that into their lives.
Yeah, experiences, not things.
It's experience, exactly right. It's experiences. And I think that's really important because I think if you think about how things have evolved over the years, I mean, we went through 90s, 80s, 90s, back in sort of those days, even early 2000s, it was all about materialism and opulence, and it's about acquisition and what can I get in my life? How much can I accumulate in my life? And then we sort of went through a phase where we went through the sort of the social media generation. It was like, here I am on top of a mountain. How can I socially signal all of these places that I've been to sort of raise my profile and what have you? And it's really interesting to me that I think that's evolving, and I think people now are looking for really, good core experiences where they can go and they can just experience something and not be part of that, and where it can
build relationships.
And also transformation, right? I mean, everyone's looking to evolve, right? If you can find a way that you can go to an experience, whenever you travel, what you're looking for? You can be doing the fly and flop vacation where you just want to go and take a break, right? Or you go somewhere where you want to expose yourself to something, you want to have a new experience.
Local culture, local food.
Yeah, and something that will be immersive for you, but at the end of the day will transform you a little bit.
Yeah, you're learning.
You're opening your mind, your heart, your awareness, and I think your eyes you're opening and being more open to different culture things. That to me is what travel's all about. And I think one of the things that we're really passionate about is how can we encourage people to really take that seriously. And it's kind of funny in our organization because the irony for me is of running a vacation company. I say this to my colleagues all the time, is that I'm not a great planner, right? I mean, we have people in the organization that one of my colleagues who runs our marketing team, she's a great planner, she's super well organized. I can't think beyond the end of a couple of weeks, but I have my vacation ambassador and she calls me up and she says, you have nothing on the books, you should go somewhere. You take some time out. Mm-hmm. And it forces me to do that, and I go away and I decompress and I come back a much better person because of it. So
if I'm going to extract another lesson, it's that what brought us here is not necessarily what's going to get us
100% right
to the next place.
100% right.
And travel experiences, getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your routine. Oftentimes that's what does it.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Maybe let's put a cap on this, James, by offering some of your best advice to budding entrepreneurs or experienced entrepreneurs about your space, and maybe expanding this idea of, what got you here. Doing the same status quo is not necessarily what's going to get you to the next level.
Yeah.
Maybe put a cap on it.
I think a couple of things. I think one is, I think you've got to remain curious. I think being curious, I think asking lots of questions. I think listening to people on the front line, listening to your clients, our members, what are their ideas, and finding ways to do that. I think the other thing is, in any organization, it's all about your people, right? It's all about your culture. And if you have to have people motivated. And in my legacy, I don't have kids, and I think my legacy in my life is if I can have an impact on people in our organization that will take them to a place in their careers that they didn't think they were capable of going to, and I can help them on their journey, they you see people open up in different ways that you wouldn't expect. And they do things that they didn't think they were capable of. And that's what drives an organization. It makes it fun. It makes it interesting. People get passionate about it. And that's how you grow. And I think if you can unlock that from a culture, it's super important. So for me, I think my advice to anyone running businesses are those things. Be curious, be in the details, speak to lots of people, give talent opportunities and promote talent, because that's the thing. And also great leadership is getting out of people's way. Find good people and just let them do their thing and and if they fail, that's fine. Work it out. But But of course, having the vision and an idea of where you want to go. There's a guy called Tony Schwartz that wrote the book Powerful Engagement and things, and he's a friend of ours. And he talks about the fact that as a CEO, you're the chief energy officer. You're the person that goes in, the guy or the girl that goes in, and you're that galvanizing force and that energy component in a business. And if you can impart that to an organization and you can inspire people to do their best work, that's what drives change and that's what makes a difference.